The stock standard plan of our lives is to finish school, get a well-paying job, marry, get a house, have kids, send them to school, afford some luxuries, go on holidays, and then retire with a healthy pension to live out the rest of our lives in comfort. Piece of cake. But good plans often go awry, and many people end up overwhelmed and stressed out by money worries. They vow to become responsible with money, but quickly find out the journey to financial freedom is fraught with financial potholes. Often held back by negative money emotions, living beyond our means, borrowing too much, investing too little. And although financial planning is a good idea, it appears cumbersome and unattainable. But no matter how hopeless the situation may seem, help is available. There is always a way to get through tough economic times, ease stress levels, and regain control of finances and life. Focused on changing people's attitudes towards money, our Liberty and StanLib financial education programs help to empower people to think differently and make a difference in their lives to achieve financial freedom by creating knowledge and preparing people for impactful lives and a richer, money-secured life. We endeavour to do the right thing and do what matters. Our Liberty and StanLib Mind My Money consumer financial education training is focused on solutions at work sites and in communities. At StanLib, we focus on universities and TVET colleges to ensure young minds are adequately informed to make financial decisions. Yes, we are truly in it with you.
Good morning, good day, good afternoon from wherever you may be joining us in this year's Money Smart Week. My name is Samke Mhlongo and I'm a wealth coach, and I'm so excited to be your host for this panel where we'll talk all things importance of financial education, investing and retiring. Now, I don't need to go very far to paint the landscape of South Africa's dire personal finance conditions as a result of the 2020 lockdowns. I don't need to tell you about the unemployment rates. I don't need to tell you about the job losses. I don't need to tell you that TransUnion has reported that as much as 82% of South African credit consumers have been affected by the lockdowns. And of course, I don't need to tell you about the most recent spate of Fees Must Fall protests and why it is so important for us to plan in advance for our personal finances. But I don't have the tough job of actually bringing some answers on how we can manage our finances. I'll leave that up to my esteemed panel, which I'm joined by today, made up of Mr. Riaz Gardi, who is the head of Group Corporate Finance at Liberty. Welcome to the panel, Riaz. I'm also joined by Peter van der Roos, who is a portfolio manager at StanLib. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you. Okay.
And finally, a rose amongst the thorns. I'm joined by Amanda Jitsing, who is director at Infinites. Welcome, Amanda, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I'm going to kick off with you, and right off the bat, I want you to kind of paint the landscape for us with regards to financial education and why it is so important for us to increase the focus of financial education, especially in a pandemic world.
Thanks, Samke. That is a very important question. And for me, it goes back to how you started. We need to paint the landscape of where we are in South Africa and as South Africans. And at the moment, we know that even before the pandemic, South Africa and South Africans were struggling. The South African economy had just been downgraded just before the pandemic. You had high unemployment rates sitting at about 29%, and you had GDP stagnating. And what does that do to people? Well, it means that if you are unemployed, you have very little income coming in, often relying on a grant. If the country is not growing, you can't grow your business. So it affects, the macroeconomic picture affects real people every day. At the same time, we have these macroeconomic woes that we're facing as a country, but it is combined with low levels of financial literacy. And that is a major challenge in South Africa at the moment, and one that I'm hoping through initiatives like Money Smart Week, we address. And we know from a recent survey by the OECD that only 31% of South Africans could meet the minimum financial literacy score. 4 out of 10 South Africans said that they did not save at all in the previous 12 months. Now, if you haven't saved money, it means that it is much more difficult to deal with an economic shock when it comes your way. And the pandemic is probably the biggest economic shock that any South African household has faced. And so what you have in a pandemic is this crucial need for appropriate and useful and relevant financial education. Things that we need to know now as South Africans: how to deal with debt, what happens if I'm retrenched, what do I do if I no longer can pay my retirement fund. And what you've seen is that government put in place, and the banks and the financial sector put in place, a couple of mitigation measures like payment holidays and so on, but these are short term. And where I think financial education is going in currently and in the post-pandemic era is us helping South Africans, ordinary South Africans, to recover from what the effect that the pandemic has had on their finances. And that means providing topical, relevant, and on time, I guess, financial education.
Peter, I'd like to segue from what Amanda has said with regards to the importance of financial education in helping South Africans not only recover from the pandemic, but I guess better plan for future economic shocks, because we know that we had the 2008 crisis, and before that we had a number of shocks throughout history, and we may very well face more shocks in the near future. In fact, some financial professionals say that it happens, about every 8 years. I wanted to ask you, you're an investing professional, you've got fancy degrees and qualifications and CFAs. You know, does an intervention as simple, some may say, and as basic as teaching people how to budget or manage their finances or debt repayment strategies, does that help to improve people's overall financial management? Does that help people to invest better, to save and invest better?
Absolutely. I think that it's incumbent on people to educate themselves. Quite often we look to the outside world for some sort of education that needs to be coming our way. The reality is that the onus is on us as individuals to take full responsibility for our financial situation. That means, yes, planning, having a budget, thinking about your future, and it means tapping into professional investment advice, professional investment current thinking. I was going to say wisdom, but it's not always that wise. but hopefully some considered thought. And there is a mountain of this information out there on the internet available for free. For example, we write regular pieces that we put on our website, and so do thousands of asset managers out there. So people could actually do nothing but simply go and scour the web for information. It is out there, and educate themselves. Because the reality is that although we think that these are especially uncertain times are always uncertain. And ironically, what that means is that the most certain thing is that another rainy day will come. Mm-hmm. So you've got to prepare for that.
Peter, I hear you, and I do agree. Many asset management houses do put out fun fact sheets and newsletters and updates with regards to finances, but there's so much jargon always, and there's so much legalese and all this hectic titles, Global Balanced Equity Fund. Oh my goodness, I've got a headache just looking at the title. And I'm hoping, Riaz, you can give me a simpler answer to my question, which is, we know we're in crisis now, and many of us have actually had to access our retirement funding to get us through these times where there's been little to no cash flow. I often make the example of there being little point in asking someone to think about where they'll be at 55 when they can't even tell you where they're going to be next year at 35 or 40. So in very simple, practical terms, number one, has the world of retirement funding changed? And number two, when we think about retirement, should we still be thinking just about the traditional instruments like your pension funds and preservation funds and RAs? Or is there a wider pool of investments and, I guess, wealth generation strategies we should be thinking about?
Thank you. I think those are all good points. And I think it's important to know that retirement is merely a different phase in your life. So like any phase in your life, you need to plan for that phase. And in that phase, there's different components. There's financial, emotional, medical, and so on. And they all actually need to tie in together. So depending on your objective, your financial position needs to be able to allow you to live in the way that you want to, emotionally, socially, medically, and so on. So therefore, it's important that you have a plan for your retirement, and that also relates to your relationship with money. How do you actually relate to money? What is it to you, and what is your nature in terms of how you react to that? The mind wants everything. Remember that. There's no limit in terms of what you want. So at the end of the day, it's about allocating the resources that you have to save, to invest, to spend, and to live in a way which is responsible for you. So it has to be tailor-made to each and every individual, because each person is totally unique.
So then I'm hearing you talk about the uniqueness of personal finance planning. I'm hearing Peter talk about the responsibility lying with each of us to plan for our finances. I'm hearing Amanda talk about the importance of financial education and the importance of the financial sector. And I'm asking myself, and I'm sure you at home watching as well, are asking yourself, so do I do this myself? Or do I partner with a financial advisor? Or do I do this myself in partnership with a financial advisor? Short and sharp. Amanda.
Okay, so 2 top tips from me. The first is that there are lots of financial education programs out there. Between the banking industry and the retirement saving industry, we train between 800 to 1 million people in South Africa every year. So there's a lot available out there. The great thing about COVID, perhaps in this case, is we've also moved financial education online. And that's exciting because it means more people can access it. So the first thing is look for a financial education program. You will find lots of information online. The Mind My Money program is one of them, for instance, that you can look up, and there's a lot of information on how to manage your finances online. As Peter said, information is out there. Please use it. The second thing about the financial advisor is we all need advice at some point in our life. And my top tip is find the right financial advisor for you. At different stages in your life, you will need different types of financial advice. If you're nearing retirement, for instance, you might need to understand the tax implications of withdrawing from your pension fund. So then you need a a tax consultant. But if you're starting off and you're young and you want to invest and structure your portfolio in a way that reflects you as a person, then talk to a financial planner or a financial coach.
So there's different types of financial advisors, essentially, is what Amanda's saying. Peter, waiting on the individual being responsible, waiting on the financial advisor being responsible, or a mix of the two?
So I think it's a mix of the two, but that mixture is more powerful the more the individual takes ownership of their own destiny. And the more people educate themselves about money, about fundamental concepts like the impact of time and the inflection of time on money. Those are fundamental concepts that if people educate themselves on, actually they empower themselves, and whatever money partnership they then embark on is that much more useful and powerful.
So you as an individual are in the driving seat, the financial advisor is just the coach or the person giving direction. I like that. Riaz, you've got the pressure of wrapping this up for us in terms of who takes ultimate responsibility in the financial well-being of an individual.
So I think leading on to your question is, do you need a financial advisor? If you're thinking that thought, the answer is yes. So I think it's very important to then see who's the right financial advisor for you, and you can check in terms of your money contact points. So at your bank or at your savings place, wherever your money is, you can see what type of services they offer. They will point you into the right direction for financial advice. And that will allow you to have the correct relationship with money so that you are empowered yourself to make the decisions that will impact on your life.
Your money contact points. That's very pertinent because I know I have a financial advisor who deals with my short-term insurance. I have a wealth manager for my investments. I have my a retirement funding manager. So it's a mix of the three, and I'm getting different inputs into how I'm conducting myself both for short-term, medium-term, and long-term benefits. I hope you watching at home have learned a lot from our segment. Our time is unfortunately up, but I'm hoping that you've taken something away, you've learned something, and perhaps we may have even just encouraged you to start thinking a little bit more and a little bit better about your finances, and reminded you that actually your financial outcome is ultimately your responsibility and in your hands. So from me, Samke Mhlongo, it's firstly thank you very much to my esteemed panel, and I wish you all the very best for the year ahead. From me, it's goodbye and God bless.